Number 10. Henry Morgan. Henry Morgan ruled the Caribbean and people feared his name. Mid-1600s. He's most famous for his attacks on Spanish vessels and plundering and raiding towns. He had a powerful Jamaican fleet, and folk stories claim that he may have overtaken more than 300 vessels and ships during his entire life as a pirate. Massive raids, 30 ships, 1,500 men easy, town to town, stealing enormous wealth. A pirate's pirate. He was later arrested and taken to England, but there he was actually pardoned, knighted by Charles II, and sent back to Jamaica to continue his place amongst the plantations. Again, these were not cool pirates. Most of them were really evil people who believed in some pretty evil things. But again, I'm not going to start judging a pirate on doing bad things. It's a pirate, so. Number 9, Captain Kidd. As always, if you dig this video, comment down below what other pirate tales you know of. Maybe we got a part 2 brewing. Who knows? Scottish sailor William Kidd, aka Captain Kidd, born around 1645. Kidd was a privateer with the British and was even commissioned to arrest other pirates. Dude, that's sick. Just like a pirate vigilante out there. Kind of being a pirate when he wants type deal, you know? Kidd famously captured a huge ship, the Quito Merchant, in 1698, filled to the brim with gold, silver, silk, satin, you name it. He was officially a pirate. Although he didn't like being called that. He considered himself the Robin Hood type pirate. He even made his men give back stolen things that he didn't okay. So Kidd left the Caribbean, traveled to New York to clear his name, but when there, he was arrested for being a pirate and ultimately tried and executed. His body was on display from the banks of the River Thames as a warning to other pirates. That's just barbaric. Like, is that really necessary? Number 8. Anne Bonny. Anne was an Irish pirate operating out of the Caribbean and one of the few infamous female pirates in recorded history. She grew up, married a nice sailor, and moved to Nassau, Bahamas. There she met and fell in love with the infamous pirate John Calico Jack Rackham and took on a life of pirating and plundering the 7 seas with him. Dude, that's sick. Why aren't there like 14 movies about her? She met another pirate, and the small crew of 3 grew to one of the most infamous and revered outfits of the oceans. Anne Bonny wore men's jackets, long trousers, a handkerchief tied around her head, machetes, pistols, like 12th Night, but like the real deal, dude. She was ultimately captured alongside Rackham in 1720. The crew was sentenced to death, but Bonny, being pregnant at the time, was pardoned for about 9 months. Number 7. Mary Read, aka Mark Read, was an English pirate born in 1685 and among the few women known to have been convicted and engaged in piracy at the height of the golden age of pirates. Again, like Anne, she was a toughie. From the age of 12, she found herself disguising herself to work on ships as a gunner, laborer, and gunpowder handler. Reed's ship was unfortunately taken by pirates, whom she willingly joined, but then rejoined her crew in a mutiny. In 1720, she then met and joined pirate Calico Jack and his companion, Anne Bonny, who both believed her to be a man. She joined the crew and eventually gained the love and trust of both of them, and her time as a pirate was successful but short-lived. Although Jack Rackham was swiftly executed, both Reed and Bonny were pregnant and received delayed sentences. Yeah, again, where are the movies? Number 6. Henry Avery, aka the Arch Pirate, aka the King of Pirates. Avery was famous for being one of the few pirate captains to escape with his loot without being arrested or killed in battle. Mid-1690s, Avery's pirate career only lasted 2 years though. His exploits captured the public's imagination so fast that it inspired others to become pirates and spawned tons of literary works around him. That being said, he wasn't like a cool badass pirate. This guy was rotten. Like, did things that are terrible to people. It's cool and all being a pirate and stuff, but it's not all Jack Sparrow type stuff all the time. This guy was feared by the feared people, you know? He was cruel. His fate was never known as he was captured. He just kind of disappeared. Number 5. Howell Davis. Howell Davis was a Welsh pirate born in 1690. His pirate career lasted only 11 months, from July 1718 to June 1719, when he was ambushed and killed. His ships were the Cadogan, the Buck, the St. James, and the Rover. Davis captured more than 15 English and French ships in those 11 months. Whoa. Having enjoyed the short career, This young pirate captured the entire Caribbean's attention with his navigational skills and daring nature to take on ships much larger than his own. He was pretending to be a legitimate privateer, commanding naval ships until he snuck on and held them up. He would fly black flags from ships in the area to pretend that he had a bigger fleet. When he tried to kidnap the governor of Portugal acting like he was a Royal Navy pirate hunter, they caught on though, and he was ambushed. Ballsy pirate, very ballsy. Sneaking around all Assassin's Creed Black Flag style ship to ship. Dude, I love it. Number 3, Calico Jack. Calico Jack, John Rackham, was one of the most unique pirates during the golden age of piracy. Born in England, not very charismatic, and failed to get an enormous wealth, but what he did go down in history for was his flag designs and for his 2 female pirate crew members slash love interests whom he shared romantic relationships with, camaraderie with, and sword fights back to back with. He started on a small crew pirating small vessels until he stole a much larger ship named the Kingston and became the captain of his crew. While in port, he met a young lady by the name of Anne Bonny, a married woman whom he'd run off to sea with. The flag commonly associated with Rackham depicts the classic white skull above crossed swords on a black background, and Rackham is credited with inventing and designing the quote, Jolly Roger first design. Dude, artist, lover, pirate, again, where are these movies? Number 2, Qing Shi. Born in 1775 in Guangdong province, Qing was thrown into work as she was famous within the province for her beauty, hospitality, and intelligence, attracting a certain pirate Zheng Yi in 1801 who asked for her hand in marriage. She agreed, but only if she was paid a heavy price and she could command his ship and crew. She began implementing strict guidelines about equality, status or sex aside. Qing took full control with progressive policies, and even other fleets joined her pirate empire, creating the largest pirate fleet in history known as the Red Flag Fleet. We're talking thousands she commanded. She had 3 rules. If you sneak off, you're out. If you steal, you're out. And if you harass women, you're out. Coined the Pirate Queen, Qing even broke up the Confederation in 1810 and negotiated a deal with the Chinese government. The pirates were pardoned for their crimes, allowed to keep their vessels, and even had a place amongst the Chinese army. And coming at the number 1 spot, of course, Blackbeard. Edward Teach, born 1680 in Bristol, England. He's probably the most infamous and revered pirates on this list and in history of the 7 seas. Blackbeard intimidated enemies by coiling smoking fuses into his long braided facial hair and by slinging multiple pistols and daggers across his chest. Can you imagine? This guy must have been terrifying to look at. In 1717, he captured a French ship, renamed it the Queen Anne's Revenge, and decked it out with about 50 guns. With that firepower then, he blockaded the port of Charlestown, South Carolina, holding the entire town at ransom until the residents met his demands for their huge supply of medicines. After laying low after holding up a town, Blackbeard was then killed in battle by the British Navy out for his arrest. Legend says that he had 20 stab wounds and 5 bullet wounds before finally sinking to Davy Jones' locker. His head was suspended from the bow of the enemy ship and then placed upon a spike at Chesapeake Bay for years, warning other pirates of his capture and demise. Dude, dark times, huh?
Number 9, Francis Drake. Sic Parvis Magna, greatness from small beginnings. That may sound familiar to PlayStation fans of the Uncharted series. Francis Drake was an English explorer, captain, and Navy expert. He's most well known for travels and circumnavigation. That's all fine and dandy. However, Francis Drake's expeditions weren't exactly without scandal, as they were also pirating expeditions, as the Queen had basically instructed him to plunder Spanish ships and ports on his way. Which they did. Well, why not? The Queen says you gotta do it, you gotta do it. His biggest prize came in March 1579 when he seized the Spanish treasure ship, the Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, and liberated it of a dozen chests of coins, 80 pounds of gold, and 26 tons of silver. Wow, that's a lot of loot. He even shared a lot of his booty with his fellow mates and financial backers. Very Robin Hood of you, sir. I commend, yeah, that's nice. Number 8, Black Bart. Bartholomew Roberts may have been the most successful pirate, at least according to vessels captured, with somewhere ranging a total of 400 ships in his lifetime. Estimated, of course. A vicious and brutal man, he was a natural-born pirate. He spent most of his life on pirate ships before becoming captain himself. He adopted the pirate code and may have been the first pirate to fly colors. Interesting. One thing for sure, there would never be a Welshman so nasty as Black Bart ever again. He was operating all over the globe, America, Canada, South America, Africa. He eventually would meet his end in battle, but was gallantly remembered for his piracy by other pirates. Number 7, Grace O'Malley. The golden age of piracy was a long time ago, so yeah, there's not going to be that many female pirates. That's how it goes. However, the female pirates that were around were pretty nasty, and it seems whenever a fair lass gets behind the helm of a ship, they seem to do very well, like Grace O'Malley. Even at a young age, she was showing signs of rebellious leadership. She was stubborn and in her ways. She cut her hair in defiance as a youth. The girl was stubborn, she wouldn't listen. That grit is what made her a very successful pirate, and to this day, remembered to the Irish as a hero. She's got a couple statues around. I don't have a statue, I wish I did. Number 6, Captain Morgan. Pirate, businessman, and rum. My knowledge of Captain Morgan goes about as far as high school parties in your mom's basement, or enjoying a refreshing cocktail with too much sun at the Coddy and the Muskokas, bro. In actuality, he was a ruthless pirate who made his fortune plundering Spanish ships. Spanish had a lot of trade going to and from the New World, so it kinda just makes sense. Well, after he made his do-re-mi, he did the next sensible thing and invested in some land. And by that I mean he owned plantations, so yeah, he wasn't such a nice dude. Diversifying is great, anyone will tell you that, but not like that. That's not a good business. We don't like that here. Like a lot of the pirates on this list, his early life is pretty much unknown. So all that's down on record is that he was a devious criminal who oftentimes was trying to dodge the crown. Number 5, Rachel Wall. A very interesting case here, as this may be the only American woman to try her luck at piracy for the time. A runaway at a young age, she eventually found herself sailing the seas with a group of unsavory characters. What makes Rachel join this less than reputable folks on the sea here? Well, it's actually her siren song tactics. Extremely clever and lethal. Rachel Wall's crew and ship were opportunists. Whenever a storm had come through the area, they would brave the storm and then dress the ship as if it had received major damage or just really look out of luck from the storm. Then take the ship and place it where they knew other vessels full of loot would be passing by. The crew hid, and then they placed the fair lass on the main deck. She lured in ships to their doom, for after they got close, the charade was uncovered and the opposing ship was boarded. It's actually very smart. I wouldn't think of that side, because you see a woman out at sea, you gotta go help her, and then there she is, and then, arr, give me your money. I don't know, that's what pirates do, right? They say that. Number 10, Canada. What? When you clicked on this video, I bet you weren't expecting the Great White North to be expert smugglers, did you? Well, truth be told, even as a Canadian, neither did I. But the history here is kind of interesting, so strap in, folks. Okay, so Prohibition. No more production and sale of alcohol in America. Canada, as America's little brother, followed suit. However, Canada's laws were not as strict. While consuming and production of alcohol was banned from bars, it was still legal for medicinal, religious, and really every other reason you need a bottle of whiskey for. However, the most important point was that in Canada, the export of alcohol was still allowed. So literally, bootleggers, outlaws, crooks, and a lot of thirsty folks flocked to places like Montreal, where a lot of the stricter laws were just repealed. This also meant that the flock of unsavory characters could just load up a boat full of liquid courage, and there wasn't really anything the law could do to stop them, even though they knew what and where it was going to. American speakeasies and dry places on the American side. Kinda interesting. Good old Canada. Look at that. Canada supplying your booze. Love that. Love that for you. Number 9, Dutch Schultz. Oh, come on, Dutch. I know you need your money to get to Tahiti, but you're bootlegging Dutch. And by the way, Mike is a rat, Dutch. Anyway, haven't busted out the Arthur Morgan impression in a while, but here we are. Originally named Arthur Fliegenheimer. Truth be told, I would change my name too, because you can't be a successful smuggler with that kind of alias. The man smuggled his way to wealth and fame and was more violent than you care to know. Seriously, some of the stuff I can't even talk about. A known racketeer, smuggler, and shyster. He was eventually betrayed and he perished. I believe the saying, live by the blam blam, perish by the blam blam, yeah, that applies here. Number 8, JFK Sr. Some may be surprised to know this, and others will understand this as very on brand for the Kennedy family, but they weren't exactly the squeaky clean all-American family you think they were. Never mind the numerous scandals and tragic life-losing accidents, the Kennedy fortune was something made in moonlight, i.e. illegally. Old Man Kennedy made his fortune with bootleggers and well-known Italian mobsters during Prohibition in the 20s and the 30s. Yes, the Kennedy family has its ties in La Cosa Nostra. Or that doesn't exist if you ask Tony Soprano, depends who you ask. While this information wasn't the best kept secret, his connections with the mob made him very, very wealthy and powerful, and just may have had a hand in getting his son elected to presidency in the 1960s. Maybe, but I'll never tell, we'll never know. Number 7, NASCAR. Shout out to the southern states. There's a stock car track not too far from me which usually brings out a good crowd. Well, why in the heck am I bringing that up? Well, that's because NASCAR has its roots in moonshine runners, which is a fancy schmancy term for rednecks who distill illegal high-proof alcohol in secluded forested areas while under the supervision of moonlight. Ooh, scandalous. The early NASCAR legends may or may not have gotten their start during the late-night shine runs. I'm not gonna, I'll never know. We'll never know. I don't know, maybe, possibly. They did. I don't know what's more impressive, trying to boil corn down in the woods to make alcohol without hurting yourself or evading the law at top speeds on dirt roads. It's kind of impressive, actually. And the whole boiling process, it's hard. You ever try to look that up, Chris? It's hard. Not that I would know, because I'm not a moonshiner. I wouldn't know. Number 6, Arnold Rothstein, crime lord of the Jewish American gangster underground, considered to be the smartest of all bootleggers. Ooh, what an honor. Sure, maybe he was the smartest. I mean, I'd personally just like to argue it's hard to catch any of these guys when there's so many to catch in the first place, but okay. After importing a lot of his alcohol from the very wet UK, and that's not a rain joke, they just had a lot of booze, he began spending his time diversifying into illegal sports betting and manipulation. Black Sox fans may recall the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Ooh, scandals, he manipulated the whole game. Eventually, like most gangsters, smugglers, and Nazi people of the time, he caught a couple slugs to the body, and well, that was picture wrap for him. Don't be messing with the sports and the baseball and all that. Don't be messing with that. Number 5, Barry Seal. This guy lived the life of a man. Barry Seal was your average airline pilot in the 80s, but of course it was the 1980s. Man, I missed out. And he found himself in a very unique position. He was smuggling jungle sugar for the infamous Medellin cartel. Barry at one point was being paid $500,000 a flight and taking with him tons and tons of snowflake emoji, you know what I'm talking about. Well, eventually the DEA caught up with poor Barry and he became an informant for them. At his peak, the man was involved with the cartel, the DEA, and even a CIA investigation involving a Panamanian dictator. Ooh, crazy. That's, wow. Sadly for Barry, after testifying, the cartel found out, and then he ended up on the cartel's bad side, which means he's not around anymore. That's the best way to put it. He's sleeping with the fishes, if you know what I'm saying. Number 4, Meyer Lansky. Yet another Prohibition-era smuggler and crook, and a friend and associate of Lucky Luciano and other less than reputable Italian organized gentlemen, if you know what I'm saying. To the cops, it was the legitimate businessman's club. To everyone else, he was a ruthless criminal and responsible for smuggling all sorts of illicit products over the border. So, what makes him so great? Why is he on the list? He's just like every other gangster, right? Well, that's because, like many other of his associates and business partners, he didn't perish. He lived a rather long life. Especially for someone in his field, you really don't make it out that long. Making it all the way until 80 years old. And it was lung cancer that took him out, not a gangster. So that's kind of impressive. Not a lot of people live that long. Usually you write a book and, that's it. But that guy, he made it. He made it. Number 3, George Ramus. This is the textbook definition of, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. And I get that, I respect that. George Ramus was a lawyer defending Prohibition crooks, but like Saul Goodman, he said to himself, why cash bum checks when I can do much better than this? Heck, I can do this better than them. So that's exactly what Georgie did. He purchased a large supply of alcohol through a fake medical company. Then afterwards, he set up his own shipping company with his delivery trucks. And then he would send out his own delivery trucks out on an alcohol delivery, where he would then have his own goons rob said truck, his own truck, and then the truck would make its way to speakeasies or wherever they were needed, illegal businesses. Eventually he was caught and he got into some trouble. He lost a lot of money and it didn't look good. His wife left him, and after some time he saw her in the street and well, she didn't make it. He went back to court and they found him he was insane. They let him off, which is kind of crazy, even though it was in cold blood on the street. What a crazy story. I can't. Where's that movie? Where's that movie? Number 2, Al Capone. the king of bootlegging. I've talked about Capone in a few videos, but you gotta understand the impact this guy had. It's a rags to riches story, except the main character is a ruthless, merciless Italian-American gangster. He always thought of it as a simple service he was providing to the community, and while I can't begrudge anyone wanting a stiff drink after work, I don't blame you. Chris is probably gonna go home and have a beer after this. I'm gonna go home and have a beer after this. Right, Chris? Yeah. Yep, so there you go. That's how it goes. I don't blame you. How can I? But it's the other stuff surrounding Capone that's really the issue at hand here. He smuggled in tons of booze every year and made millions, and did a lot of heinous things in between. Just remember, folks, if you're gonna start a criminal empire, make sure to file your taxes, because the IRS doesn't care if you're a ruthless criminal and violent, so long as you pay your taxes. Yeah! Number 1, Pablo Escobar! Who else? Besides Han Solo, nobody beats Pablo in smuggling. Maybe Conja Club, maybe them, I don't know. The kingpin of the Medellin cartel and lord of Colombian snow. Pablo got to start smuggling simpler things into his country. Electronics, luxuries, and just other valuables. He worked his way up to, well, the same stuff that made Milli Vanilli palatable in the 80s, and the rest is history. Besides being the richest man on earth at one point, his fleet of vehicles speaks for themselves. Boats, cars, a taxi company, helicopters, planes, submarines, all kinds of houses. Just, the guy owned a lot and had a lot of connections, especially smuggling routes. The DEA probably still has nightmares about it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, eye patches. Okay, perhaps one of the most notable features of a pirate has to be the old eye patch. If you're a pirate for Halloween and you don't have the eye patch, well, you just look like a hipster. Like, what are you? We don't know. It matters. It's a noticeable detail. But why did so many pirates cover their eyes? Was it because they got poked by Blackbeard? No. You know when you get up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, then as soon as you turn the light on, you're blinded for a hot minute, you can't even see, your ears are ringing, you don't even know where you are? It takes your eyes 20 minutes to adjust to darkness, so pirates having to go from the deck to under the ship back and forth, they had to keep one eye in the dark. Or else they'd be covering their eyes for most of their shift, which you really can't have when you're running a tight ship. Nobody has the time for that, so cover your eyes and be blind half the time.
At number 9, earrings. When you think about what a stereotypical pirate looked like, you probably think of tattered clothing, hats, maybe an eye patch, and earrings. Well, their style, though pretty odd, also had a purpose, specifically the earring. Pirates were very superstitious, and their earrings followed in their superstitions as well. There were a lot of different beliefs that pirates had about these earrings. Some pirates believed that it could somehow improve or even cure bad eyesight. Why? No clue. Maybe they thought that ears and eyes were connected or something. I mean, they do start with the same letter. Some pirates also believed that the precious metals that their earrings were made of possessed magical healing powers, so maybe that's why they believed that they would heal their eyes. They also thought that having pierced ears would help them with seasickness, and that having a gold earring would serve as some kind of protective talisman, and that if you wore one, you would be protected from drowning.
Number 8, hooks. Growing up watching cartoons, I've seen many versions of Captain Hook, or pirates that resemble a Captain Hook type villain. They all have the eye patch, earrings, and to make them more menacing, they have hooks for hands. Dustin Hoffman scared the shit out of me growing up in the movie Hook. It's literally called Hook. What's up with this? Well, this wasn't a move by film studios, this was actually historically accurate. Back in those days, they didn't have advanced prosthetic limbs, and when you're sword fighting over loot, well, odds are you're gonna lose a hand or two at one point. These pirates actually got compensation, which is so funny to me, just imagining a pirate filling out an insurance form, that's funny, but their replacement tool was usually a hook, or a peg leg. They would just replace your leg with a singular piece of wood. That was the best they could do back then, and it had to work. Another fun little fact, if you got injured, your payroll came out of everybody's collective treasure. So you better have that athletic stance down and dodge some swords, or else you're getting some shame. A lot of shame coming your way.
At number 7, walk the plank. I'm sure you have no doubt heard of the term walking the plank, right? It is the stereotypical pirate thing to do when you need to get rid of someone, if you know what I mean. Well, we've sort of been misled by this whole walking the plank thing, because rather than it be a method of offing your buddy Joe for not following orders, it was actually used as a method of psychological torture. Now, don't get me wrong, pirates had many other imaginative and gruesome ways of unaliving people, but walking the plank really wasn't one of them. It was actually a relatively rare practice, as pirates like to do their unaliving practices pretty swiftly, rather than making their unlucky victim walk a plank into the ocean, the most common form of putting someone 6 feet under, so to speak, was through keel hauling. Keel hauling was where you tied someone to a rope, threw them into the water, and pulled them under the boat and up to the other side. Now you would think that this person could just hold their breath and then survive, but no, not really. Instead, the unlucky soul would be hitting up against the boat and getting shredded by the barnacles on the boat before coming up to the surface. I don't know about you, but after knowing that, I would much rather walk the plank.
Number 6. Maps, books, and gold. Just as valuable as gold and silver, back in the day, maps were a treasure in itself. It kind of helps knowing where you're going, to be fair. Also, pirates need to remember where they left their treasure. You can't really rely on a drunken pirate's memory now, can you? These charts would be stolen, obviously, and in turn, these guys would go on a little national treasure Hans Zimmer pirate adventure. One map in particular from the 1680s, the Spanish Atlas, was stolen, and National Geographic called this stolen map extremely valuable pirate booty. So this treasure's still out there somewhere, and somebody's got the directions. Knowledge was key. They didn't have Siri hanging out all day to answer navigational questions. They even had to steal books. Pirates stealing books. What a scene. Some of these pirate heists wouldn't even involve treasure. They would sword fight and just hope that the books on board were worth the battle. Imagine losing countless crew members and all you got is the captain's daily logs. Just sailing the high seas roasting William Kidd's girl problems. You're like, what an idiot!
At number 5, marooning. Let's talk about the brutal yet mysterious practice of marooning, and no, we're not talking about Maroon 5. Marooning was a pirate punishment, probably the most dreaded punishment of them all, where someone who committed a serious offense would be taken to a deserted island and then left there. No food, no water, just you and the island. For many, this was a slow and painful death. Being left on an island in the hot sun meant you got badly sunburnt, you had no food unless you could find something in the area, and chances were that there was no fresh water on that island, so you would become dehydrated quite quickly. At high tide, the water could flood the island, or you would be left standing in water up to your neck, and any predators in the area would have seen you as a little snack. This sounds like a terrible way to go. I could not imagine the physical and psychological torment that would come with such a fate. Man, I'm glad I'm not a pirate.
Number 4. Pirate curfew. This next one made me laugh out loud while I was reading up on it. It doesn't matter how badass or cool you think you are, even if you're a literal pirate, you still have a bedtime. These guys would straight up abandon their mateys, they would leave them on an island to die, and then sword fight over treasure. But come 8 o'clock, it's time to shut her down. Because it's pirate code, you can't break the code. Captain Black Bart Bartholomew Roberts, he insisted back in 1722 that lights and candles were out at 8 o'clock sharp. If anybody wanted to stay up later than 8, they can go and hang out on the deck. Honestly, I love this rule. I'm here for this. Imagine roommates being on board for this as well. Nowadays, you get the best sleep of your life. Thing is, these guys needed all the time they could get because they had to sleep in hammocks. Not the most comfortable or relaxing environment. A hammock nap, sure, but a hammock sleep every night? No wonder pirates were so angry. It's starting to make sense.
At number 3, cryptic treasure. There once lived a pirate named Olivier Levasseur, and he was considered one of the last great pirates. Over the years, it was said that Levasseur had stolen many treasures of great value and had a large haul of precious finds. Once people finally caught up to him, he was captured and sentenced to death by hanging, but before he died, his final words were, quote, "Find my treasure, the one who may understand it," end quote. And then he threw a cryptogram into the crowd, and that was the last of them. To this day, no one has been able to decipher the code. Some believe that perhaps this cryptic message was simply designed to lead people on a wild goose chase as a final joke. However, in the 20th century, a man named Reginald Herbert Cruz Wilkins, say that 5 times fast, made a breakthrough. He had been searching for the treasure for years and finally found the cave that he believed the treasure was located. Unfortunately, the cave's conditions made it impossible to get through, so the treasure remains a mystery to this day. Can you believe this all started because a pirate wanted to pull a Da Vinci Code on us? Unbelievable.
Number 2. Julius Caesar. Pirates would often take people and demand treasure. They would use hostage situations as a main ploy. In fact, at one point in history, pirates managed to scoop up Julius Caesar. like the Julius Caesar. The Emperor of Rome went through his fair share of trials, and at just age 25, he was held captive for 38 days with pirates. That's a very long time to hear horrible sea shanties. When pirates demanded ransom for the release of the young man, they set his price for 20 talents, but according to historians, that price was deemed too low from Caesar himself. He actually laughed at it and reminded these pirates that they had no idea who it was they captured. He said to ask for 50 instead of 20. How insane is that?
And finally, at number 1, pirate tunnels. You know the secret tunnel from Avatar: The Last Airbender? Well, this secret pirate tunnel is kind of similar. Below the city of Savannah, Georgia lies a series of underground tunnels that are believed to have been used by pirates. The pirates would use these tunnel systems to smuggle goods in and out of the area, as well as to smuggle captured sailors. It is said that these tunnels would lead directly to the location where the ships would have been waiting in the harbor. Apparently, there is a tunnel that led from a building in town known as the Pirate's House all the way to the river where small rowing boats would have been waiting. It has also been theorized that the Sons of Liberty, a group of people who strongly opposed the British government, would also use these pirate tunnels to meet up and have a little shindig. There are so many mysteries that surround these pirate tunnels, and many of them remain unsolved.
Number 10. George Chapman. Starting off with George Chapman, we're going back to the late 1800s for this piece of work right here. He began his career at first as a Polish doctor, but in 1888 he moved to London, and that's when things got a little more dicey. Once in London, Chapman sought out 4 mistresses. Not 3, not 2, not a side thing, not 4. Let's do 4 at the same time. George Chapman was a doctor, a cheater, and a killer. He poisoned all 4 of these women with arsenic. It was terrible. Chapman himself was executed for these crimes in 1903, but we're still talking about them because this guy was so bad they thought perhaps he might have been Jack the Ripper, but that's since been proven otherwise, so yeah. Imagine someone being so bad, they're like, maybe he was Jack the Ripper, maybe he was just another horrible individual, who knows. Number 9. Arne Johnson. Okay, this was the famous Devil Made Me Do It case. If you've watched the new Conjuring sequel with the same title, this should all ring a familiar bell. Well, it's based of course on a true story, all that's real. Back in 1981 in Brookfield, Connecticut, Arne was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and the victim was his landlord, Alan Bono. Now, prior to this, about 2 months prior, the Glatzel family witnessed their son David host a demon. Right? David was behaving strangely, the family was confident this was the work from the devil, so they called in the pros. They called in Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now this was a process that lasted days, and witnesses say that the demon that fled out of the body of David was the same that took over Arne a few months later. The same demon that made him attack his landlord. Yeah, Arne was convicted and he served 5 years out of a 10 to 20 year sentence. Yeah, he was released on good behavior. Number 8. Albert Fish. Albert is one of the oldest people on this list. He was dubbed the Brooklyn Vampire, or the Moon Maniac, or even the Boogeyman himself. It's clear that Albert was a terrible human who did terrible things. I can't really talk about some of the stuff, but yeah, given those nicknames, you can piece it together. In the early 1900s, Albert was arrested, tried, and convicted for killing, and then doing other things with these people. Horrible. But the horror was not over at that point. No, Albert began to claim that although people knew about 3, the actual number of casualties was closer to 100. And he even claimed that he had some in every state. So that's disgusting. And to make matters even worse, as if it wasn't already terrible enough, this deranged lunatic also sent a letter to the mother of one of his victims. He sent a letter detailing everything about how he lured the victim and the rest of the horrific details that occurred afterwards. Number 7. Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay, Jeffrey's one of the most well-known serial killers, with his crimes taking place, of course, from 1978 all the way to 1991. His crimes are far too brutal for this channel, but he's known for taking the lives of 17 different people. At his trial, not only did he plead not guilty, but his attorney had some interesting words for the court, some interesting things to say. His attorney stated that his bloody pattern had caused him to believe that he was the devil, which was intended to bolster his insanity plea. Odd take, but sure. Again, the devil made me do it type of bullshit. Now, his attorney said that he became enamored, overwhelmed, dare I say caught up in the character from the movie Exorcist 3. Said character being Satan because he was the personification of evil. Not only was Jeffrey found to be sane and ended up being sentenced to multiple life sentences in prison, but not too long after his sentence started, he was killed by a fellow inmate. I wonder if the devil made him do it. Number 6. Richard Iceman Kuklinski. He became one of America's most prolific killers after being hired by the famous 5 families in New York City, okay? He had around a 30-year career as a contract killer, and while he only ended up being charged and convicted for 4 killings, that's still a lot, but he had claimed that the actual number was close to 250, so yeah. When we think of what an assassin would look like, he may not be at the top of this list, which may partially be what helped him be so successful in the first place. While he killed his victims in a multitude of horrible ways, he was dubbed the Iceman due to the fact that he froze all of the bodies. This was to ensure that the coroners would be unable to determine their true time of death, right, and really figure out who was doing it. Richard ended up passing away in jail in 2006. Yeah, we know the time of death for that one. We know that one very well. The Iceman, check it out, it's on Netflix. It's a good documentary. Number 5, Ted Bundy. One of the most famous killers of all time. Ted Bundy killed upwards of 30 people during his crime spree back in the 1970s. Now, most interviews with Ted are extremely well known and they're horrible, but there's one interview that's very disturbing that's not as popular as the others. In this interview, he's talking about taking the life of a student, Georgianne Hawkins. The chilling part of it is how he talks about these dark matters just so matter-of-factly, like it's a casual conversation between work friends, like it's not him describing the most horrible acts ever committed.
She had a Spanish test the next day, and she thought that I had taken her to help tutor me for a Spanish test. It's kind of odd.
Now, of course, over on Netflix, you can pick a number of installments involving Ted Bundy. There's Conversations with a Killer, there's a movie with Zac Efron. Choose your fate. Either way, the story that you're going to hear is chilling, so you've been warned. Number 4, The Staircase. The Staircase is a classic true crime staple, one of the most widely debated cases ever, as a matter of fact. Back in 2001, Kathleen Peterson was found dead in her home. Now, this docuseries follows the investigation, a few theories surrounding the case and the trial, but Kathleen was found at the bottom of the stairs of her home, and it's horrible, it's sad, it's tragic. And while it was originally regarded as fatal, but an accidental fall that caused her passing, as the investigation unfolds, the truth gets a little more murky. Kathleen's husband, Michael, had always been somewhere near the top of the suspect list onto what happened here, considering that 1, he was the last one to see her alive, and 2, was actually home and supposedly in the backyard when this fall occurred. So yeah, definitely a suspect, for sure. We're gonna ask some questions. There's crazy theories surrounding this death. There's theories of Michael's infidelities all the way to a barn owl. There's a lot of speculation about this case, and this documentary is one you want to watch if you're a true crime lover. You're not really sure what to think afterwards, so comment down below. It's like this is chilling. This is a really chilling case. Number 3, Richard Ramirez. Richard, who is known as the Night Stalker, with of course a documentary under the same name. All these horrible people have documentaries. Richard Ramirez was a serial killer who terrorized the streets of Los Angeles back in the 1980s. He was known for invading homes, which actually initially made him dubbed as the Walk-In Killer. But he had another signature that was concerning to many people, especially during the height of the Satanic Panic. Richard was known for leaving behind different satanic messages at the scene of his crimes. Imagine walking in on that, that's terrifying. Because of his satanic signature, after he left his first pentagram at the scene of the crime, authorities became worried that he was a Charles Manson copycat, but instead he was just his own kind of monster. It's said that he would leave more pentagrams behind while also telling his victims to swear to Satan instead of swearing to God. And during his court appearances, he would also hold up a pentagram, and after pleading not guilty, he said, "Hail Satan." So yeah, quite horrible, I'd say. Number 2, Charlene Gallego. A match made in hell, it seems. Okay, this is a 2-for-1, so buckle up. Back in the late 70s, Charlene Gallego, alongside her twisted husband, Gerald, were the worst in Sacramento, California. They kidnapped, then they later killed 10 victims. It really was the most twisted situation. Disgusting, awful people. Cut to 1984, Charlene pleads guilty to and receives 16 years. Gerald was waiting for execution, but he actually died of cancer before meeting that demise. So yeah, I guess nature helped out with that one. Charlene, on the other hand, she got out. She actually moved to Fair Oaks, California, and has since changed her name. You can sleep on that. Could be living on your street, who knows. And finally, number 1, don't f with cats. Okay, when I say this is one of the most captivating documentaries I've ever seen, I mean it, okay? I was late to the party for this one. I watched it way long after it was released, but from the moment I started it, I could not stop. This documentary follows the story of the killing of Lynn Jun, which is one of Canada's most infamous crimes ever. I wanted to end on it because, of course, I'm a Canadian. I saw this on the news when I was in school. Lynn was killed by a man named Luca Magnotta, who was already stirring up some internet buzz because he was posting some pretty horrific videos before this crime even happened. As the name hinted towards, he was with cats. That's all I can say. It's horrible. The documentary follows a couple of unbelievable cyber sleuths who saw Luca's messed up videos with the cats and who were intent on finding out who he was and where he was before this killing happened. They knew it was going to get worse, so they tried to track him down, and I'm not going to spoil the rest, but yeah, it's unbelievable. The crimes themselves are absolutely horrible. The story is almost unbelievable also, but the work that they sliver, I already said that, whatever. The documentary really has it all if you're a true crime person. It really is hard to watch because of how tragic it is and the situations are dark, but again, the ending is worth it. It's definitely worth the watch, especially if you don't know the full story. They get them. Spoilers, they get them.